What you're seeing right here is in a Master Nightfall with a primary hand cannon getting up to about 55,000 damage per shot. With the things I'm going to break down in this video, you're going to be able to get up to 752% bonus damage. Yes, the main thing is Lucky Pants with Malfeasance, but there's some interactions that I'll get into that you might not know about. First, let me explain what Lucky Pants does to do a quick review, or in case you don't know. Essentially, it buffs the damage of your hand cannons. It has to either be kinetic or has to match your subclass. Each hit with your hand cannon will increase your damage of your hand cannon up to 10 stacks. So you only have a damage boost for about 5 seconds, and then it's on a cooldown for 10 seconds until you can use it again. Before you swap away your hand cannon, make sure to reload it, as it needs to be fully loaded when you switch back to activate the perk again. Once you get to 10 stacks, that's 600% bonus damage. What about the remaining 152% bonus damage? Well, let's get into that right now. The first thing to point out is that Malfeasance itself does 25% more damage to taken enemies. So this works really well for Lake of Shadows with all the taken enemies. However, it also does 25% more to a target with Witherhoard applied to them. And this does stack on top even if they're already taken. And with us entering the Grandmaster season, most Grandmaster teams do have a Well Warlock on their team, and many Well Warlocks choose to use Starfire, and many of them use Witherhoard, which makes a Hunter with Lucky Pants and Malfeasance viable for pretty much most of the Grandmasters. So of course we're getting a huge increase because we're using Lucky Pants, and 25% for the enemy being taken, and 25% since Witherhoard's applied. Also, we had an Invis Hunter who used Tether, which is a 30% debuff, and we were standing inside a Well of Radiance, which is a 25% buff, along with the fact that I was using Strand, which is a featured surge on all Nightfalls, because when you're using the matching surge, your kinetic weapons also receive a 25% increase. And I was using 3 kinetic surge mods on my legs for a total of 22% additional damage to that kinetic weapon. All those things added up as 152% extra damage on top of the damage buff that you get from Lucky Pants. So you could use Strand since it's a featured on all Nightfalls, but it will rotate between Solar and Void. So if you don't want to use Strand, just make sure to match your surge to what it is that week. You can check this video right here. I showed the whole weapon rotation along with what surges will be featured for each Nightfall. I'll have the link in the description for that video if you want to check that out. Since you're able to melt champions without using heavy ammo, it's just really nice. But one reason I like to use Strand with this is because one downside of Strand is that there's not a lot of high damage output. But since Hunters have Lucky Pants, they can put out insane damage with just a primary weapon. Is a perfect fit for Strand. Now, one drawback is the range. You have to be fairly close, but that's one thing that Strand's good for, is that you can suspend, and using these fragments right here allows you to get your shackle grenade back pretty quick with Thread of Generation, and they stay suspended very long with this fragment right here. And with Thread of Mind, when you defeat those targets that are suspended, you get a chunk of your class ability back. And of course, Thread of Warding, that way you have that extra resistance picking up that orb to give yourself Wolf and Mail. This is just a nice setup with Strand Hunter with a shackle grenade to suspend those enemies, using Malfeasance and Lucky Pants to completely delete those champions, making yourself a great asset for your team. So our whole team composition, I was Strand Hunter with this setup, Well Warlock with Witherhoard, then we had an Invis Hunter with Aeons to generate heavy ammo, and they're using Wish Ender. If you didn't know, Wish Ender is just like Witherhoard, where it does more damage to targets that are taken, also more damage to targets affected by Witherhoard. I'm almost certain you can take this team composition into most all the Grandmasters coming up, be successful. Now, I was using the Circular Logic Strand Heavy Machine Gun to use it for the Untangler and Threaded Blast artifact mods, as when you destroy these tangles, it creates a big explosion with Untangler, and then anybody damaged with that blast will be suspended with Threaded Blast. And Counter Weave is really nice, because whenever anybody in your fire team stuns a champion, you get some Strand ability energy back to your least charged ability. Another thing that affects this build is authorized mods for grenades, as it reduced the cost of my mods on my arms to 1. As I had bolstering detonation, as I get some class ability energy back whenever I hit the enemy with my grenade. And whenever I cause damage with a melee attack, this can just be any normal punch, doesn't have to be the charged melee attack. I'll get a chunk of my grenade back. And then I was using fastball just to throw my grenade further and faster in case the champions are further away. But you can really replace this with anything. A lot of Strand builds, I like to use kickstart to get my grenade back fast. However, this one, we're trying to do a lot of damage with Malfeasance, with our surge mods on our legs. And when you throw that grenade with kickstart, it will consume all your stacks. You'll no longer have this damage buff that you get from kinetic weapon surge. Of course, you're going to want to run kinetic siphon on your helmet, as you'll mostly be using your Malfeasance, and all those multi-kills will drop orbs. I was using heavy ammo finder, but you could replace this with other things if you would prefer, along with whatever resistances you would like. And for the class item, I had time dilation and Reaper. Whenever I use my class ability, I'll make an orb on my next kill, and this just extends the timer a little bit on my surge mods. Pause on the screen if you wanted to see the whole rundown of my mods on the left, and then my subclass information on the right as far as my fragments and aspects. So this build's about suspending the enemies with Strand Strand, using the high power of Malfeasance combined with Lucky Pants to melt champions and do good DPS to Nightfall bosses. So the build wasn't so much about getting your grenade back incredibly fast, but if you're more interested to get your abilities back incredibly fast, to have constant suspension, utilizing Osteo Striga for all 3 classes, check this video out right here.